Wayfinder is just a day away, and so we're all thinking about which starting character to choose to play with, for which I do have an in-depth video going through all the character abilities you can check out, but in this specific video I'll show you all gameplay footage of the 3 starting Wayfinders, Wingrave, Silo and Niss, so it isn't only the same short clips on the website and the videos that you base your choice on, but you can actually see some proper gameplay. With that said, keep in mind these are all previous footages posted about the game and might have some differences compared to the final version, but if you're interested in more, make sure to subscribe as I have tons of guides and video footage ready to go on the launch of the game, so don't miss those. First, Wingrave is our Templar character, and in my opinion it is the safest and best choice to learn Wayfinder with, especially if you're new to the genre of video games or you aren't the best when it comes to dodging mechanics in action games, and the reason is that Wingrave is basically a tanky support type character who has both good healing and damage prevention to help you survive. So Wingrave starts with a sword and shield weapon Vanguard, and sword and shield is known to be a balanced weapon that can deal both good health and resilience damage, resilience being the yellow shield bar enemies have that you have to break first to stagger enemies, and in some cases deal more damage. But remember, later on you will be able to change to any weapon available in the game once you have unlocked them. Now, the immediate advantage shields have compared to other weapons is that you can block damage anytime with your shield, and it has the best stamina consumption rate, so it doesn't cost as much to block like with two-handed weapons, once again giving you more time to learn the basics or hold the ground against tougher enemies. The unique interaction of sword and shield is the ability to shield counter, which is basically pressing attack after blocking damage for a special offensive move that also builds up your weapon's special meter called latent power, and charge up your pips, you can see the small shield icons. Each weapon has a unique mechanic such as this with different ways to unlock their full power. The Vanguard's weapon move is to slash out with a powerful attack, dealing large amounts of break damage that scales with the amount of latent power pips you have. So that is roughly for Wingrave's weapon. Let's see his passive called Healing Pulse, which is a healing ability that will heal you and a random ally near you upon doing a melee finisher move, which is essentially just finishing a weapon combo chain of like, let's say 5 or 6 attacks, but you will recognize this animation fairly simply. His first ability is called Righteous Strike that reduces damage taken while using the ability and slashes out towards your enemies, dealing damage and spawning healing orbs to heal you and your allies. And the cool thing to this ability is that once again, if Wingrave does a melee combo finisher, this ability's cooldown resets, allowing you to keep healing yourself multiple times. Your second skill, Radiant Pulse, is both a defense and an offense ability as it raises a shield that blocks ranged projectiles, very fancy in certain fights, giving you and your allies defense standing behind it, but as you use this ability it also sends a shockwave of radiant energy forward to damage foes. Judgment is your third ability, my favorite one from Wingrave, as it is the primary reason I recommend him as an easy tutorial character. Judgment marks all enemies around you, and hitting them with your weapon will each time heal you for a pretty respectable amount, allowing you to play a little bit mindlessly for the duration of the ability, healing you up and also allowing you to skip a few mechanics if they prove to be challenging, and mixing this with other faster weapons can give you even more healing, like let's say playing with dual daggers. Then your ultimate ability is Divine Aegis. It is a giant shield you raise around yourself that makes everyone inside completely immune to damage and regenerate health. This is your ultimate skip mechanics button, just place it down and you can go ham with your attacks, once again giving Wingrave a lot of safety for learning the basics of the game while also being very useful in parties. Next we have Silo, a survivalist character starting with a rifle called Longshot. He's an excellent character to start with for people who like shooters and special mechanics with them, as rifles have really neat mechanics to make them fun to play apart from just the usual pew-pew. Rifles have a cool reload minigame called Hotspot that when you reload, if you click the fire button again in the middle of the marked spot, your reload will be complete, and on top of that you gain a buff that depends on which rifle you're using. Longshot, for example, giving you double firing speed, for instance. Another neat mechanic with rifles is that shooting enemies will build up a so-called eagle eye meter you can see on your reticle, and it increases your chance to spawn a weak spot on an enemy, which deals a large amount of damage if you hit it, but most importantly, it is your mechanics to fill up your weapon special bar called Locked and Loaded for rifles. Same with other weapons, you can stack up 3 pips of Locked and Loaded, and if you use your weapon ability, Longshot actually spawns weak spots on all enemies in range, and these weak spots are special, as hitting them guarantees your shots to be a critical hit. For Silo's abilities, his first is called Firebomb, a standard fire grenade that has 2 charges you can throw. It deals both direct damage and leaves a damage over time effect of burning on enemies, dealing quite a bit of damage. His second ability, Oil Bomb, is in direct connection with it, as while Oil Bomb slows enemies when you hit them, it can also combo with Fire Bomb for a large explosion if you ignite it, for bonus damage, and on top of it, using Oil Bomb refreshes one charge of a Fire Bomb for you. Silo's third ability is a very cool proto-clone, which is a taunting clone you can leave on the ground that enemies will keep attacking, giving you the perfect amount of time to use your bombs to blow them up in a stack, or just let you get away from a bad situation and let you use, for example, with your ultimate ability, which is Arch Nemesis, using your little robot buddy to shock and slow all enemies around you for a long duration, dealing tons of damage in the process that works perfectly with proto-clone. For all of these abilities, Silo also has a passive skill called Strategic Advantage that increases his damage to all enemies that has any status effect on them by 10%, so you want to make sure you keep igniting and stunning your enemies for that bonus. Lastly, our third immediate starting character is Niss, the Shadow Dancer, starting with dual blades, so recommended for people who love fast-paced combat and rogue type gameplay. But be careful, as dual blades can only parry and not block, which, while it isn't as hard as in, let's say, Dark Souls games, you will still have to time your parries to be able to negate damage, otherwise you will get hit. While Niss starts with dual blades, I would still recommend her to anyone who likes damage dealers, as I personally will use Niss with a rifle, which also works perfectly for her, so as I always say, choose the Wayfinder, not the weapon. So dual blade's special mechanic is that every 4 attacks they will gain a pip for their weapon mechanic, and for each pip you possess you can perform a different combo finisher with your heavy attack at the end of your light attacks. 1 pip is just doing a slashing attack, or 3 pips, for example, going in an all-out super attack wombo combo, and combos also build up a cool multiplier, so if you manage to keep hitting with your daggers, you can build up a cool 300% hit bonus. Opposite to other weapons, with dual blades you build up your meter using pips and not the other way around, and when your dagger meter is up, you're ready to perform your weapon attack with a Blade Dance special effect that will cause all your attacks to hit twice for a short duration of time. Niss starts with a dual blades called Night's Edge, and your weapon ability is Nightfall that will summon magical daggers around Niss that will fly towards your enemies, dealing quite a lot of damage. Niss's first ability is called Shadow Step, which is a forward dodge you can use, and while it deceptively feels like a movement skill, it deals insane amounts of damage, and I would say is your main source of damage actually, as you damage jumping through enemies in a line, and your clone also deals damage a second time shortly after, and you have 2 charges on this ability, so you will be using it quite a lot. Your second ability, Umbral Aura, is an activation skill, and what it does is it gives you 3 charges, your allies 1 charge of a special attack that activates upon dodging, and the random enemy will be attacked by a Shadow Spike, dealing quite a bit of damage, once again a great source of passive damage you can easily apply. The third skill is Vengeful Shade, a cool defensive ability that causes Niss to jump into the air and throw daggers at her enemies in front while becoming invulnerable for the duration, and allows you to choose between 2 follow-ups to whether have a special attack forward towards your enemies or dodge backwards to create some space for you, both having extra effects later when you upgrade this skill. Niss's ultimate ability is Gloom Shroud, a super cool activation skill that allows you to use your main damage ability, Shadow Step, for 10 seconds without using any charges, so basically just spam that ability, which is not only tons of damage you can deal, but also gives you so much defense and movement that there's no mechanic you can't skip with it. Now the cool part about Niss is that they have a passive skill called Lingering Shadow, which will give you bonus ability power that increases your skill damage every time you dodge, stacking up 3 times. What makes this passive super cool is that your Shadow Step ability also counts as a dodge and will give you Lingering Shadow, buffing your ability power to make your Shadow Steps even better, making this a powerhouse. So those are the 3 starting characters for Wayfinder, everyone. You will be able to immediately start working towards unlocking the other Wayfinders, of course, but these 3 will be the ones available for all from the get-go, and I hope thanks to the compilation of gameplay footages, now you have a much better idea how the characters play and look like in-game, and will help you choose your first starting Wayfinder. As I said at the start, I have tons of guides already prepared that I will release on day 1 for the game, so if you are interested in everything to know about Wayfinder, make sure to leave a subscription to see everything on your homepage. Thank you everyone for joining this episode, appreciate all the support, can't wait for Wayfinder to release, but for now, that's a wrap. Take care everyone, and have fun.